Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today, we're going over the extremely hyped, physics-based, puzzle-filled shooter BONELAB. Not only do I have a quick review that'll let you know if this game is right for you, I also have plenty of tips and tricks that you'll want to know before getting started, and a walkthrough of some of the game's more difficult sections. Now, I thoroughly played through this title to be able to answer any of your questions, like how is the Quest version versus the PCVR version, where does it stack up compared to Boneworks, and is it still just a tech demo? And I will do all of this without giving any major spoilers. Now, if you still want to limit the information you're getting, there are links and timestamps to every single topic I'll be discussing. Or if you're just too lazy to watch this video, ask any questions you may have down in the comments and I promise I will answer them. Now, before we jump into a more traditional review, I'm sure there's some major questions that you guys want answered, and the first one up is Boneworks versus BONELAB. At their core, they are nearly identical, but BONELAB not only offers up more content and gameplay modes, it also fixes some of the major issues from Boneworks. You don't have to deal with the original lack of save system, and the updates they made to the physics over time are present, but I just cannot shake the feeling that I enjoyed Boneworks better. The best example would be the flat screen game Portal versus Portal 2. Portal was groundbreaking, revolutionary, one of a kind. While Portal 2 gave us much more game, it wasn't nearly as new or fresh. Now, luckily, most gamers are on Quest 2 and have never experienced Boneworks, so it should be extremely exciting for you. Now, I also swear that Boneworks on my PC feels better than BONELAB, but I'm also convinced that this is a technology issue, as I run Boneworks on an index with 144 Hz, and it's just not the same as a native Quest version, or playing the game with the additional latency from a link cable or air link. In a game with such powerful physics, I swear that additional latency impacts the overall feel to the point that I prefer Boneworks. Now, I did attempt to test with Revive, but this game would not work, and when I get access to the Steam version, I'll do some additional testing. Now, another major topic is how BONELAB breaks the mold. It allows you to do things that have never been done in VR before, at least on the Quest, and there is zero concern for the comfort of the VR gamer. It's both exciting and concerning to see developers go so far out on a ledge. VR enthusiasts will definitely enjoy what BONELAB has to offer, but it might be too much for new VR gamers to handle. That IK system and those exciting physics are a double-edged sword, bringing both amazing gameplay moments and ample amounts of discomfort. Now, a topic you might hear plenty of other YouTubers throwing around is the fact that BONELAB will revolutionize VR, and I just disagree. It's an absolutely amazing technological feat. It looks great, runs great, and offers a lot more than many other VR titles. But it's also basically a 3-year-old game that has just been ported over to Quest with some extra fluff added. It's a great example of how this platform can be capable of greatness, but so much time was spent on experimental physics and optimization that you still end up with just a tech demo. It will also lack mainstream appeal. Contrary to the people who might be watching these videos, the VR community still remains very casual, and the level of vection here is too high for most. The title is going to be such a big name that people who have not gained their VR legs yet will jump into it, and they're gonna have a bad time. And the final topic that I want to mention is the Quest version versus the PCVR version. Now, this one might surprise you guys because my Quest experience was actually more enjoyable, but I already mentioned why earlier in the video. Graphically, this is a solid looking title with a high level of optimization, as it's normally running at 90 Hz, only suffers from some minor frame drops, and it looks pretty damn good. The pixelation from foveated rendering was actually the first thing I noticed, which is kind of immersion breaking, but once you get into game, you're not seeing it anymore. The environment effects and enemies all look watered down across the board compared to the PCVR counterpart, but not to the point that it really impacts the experience. Probably the most jarring element was the effect when you're taking damage. On the Quest, it's very spiky and intrusive, while on PC, it actually looks like you're starting to pass out. But like I said, I enjoyed my Quest experience more because BONELAB is all about the feel of the game, and the increased latency from using a link cable, or especially air link, made things like climbing and nailing the perfect jumps that much harder, and ultimately led to more frustration, and I even swear at times I was back to 2017 VR wiggle physics when it came to melee weapons. But let's move into that review. I've completely played through BONELAB on both Quest and PCVR, and it will be absolutely amazing for some, but definitely not for everyone. They've added a ton of options from the original game and resolved some of its biggest issues, like the limited save system and needing to complete the title before gaining access to its additional modes. Now, before we get further into the review though, I need to slap a giant motion sickness warning on this one. The physics can be really janky at times, there's some intense vehicle levels, and there are also jump pads in the game that will blast you across the screen. So you're gonna need some strong VR legs for this one. Also, for those who felt like Boneworks was just a tech demo, I actually feel like BONELAB is even guiltier. Half of the campaign is just an excuse to get you to try different avatars and gameplay modes. It's definitely not your typical story-driven campaign. It seemingly has no coherent storyline, and you'll always feel like you're lost, but it also delivers some of the best gun shooting and melee mechanics of any VR game. The game features 14 main campaign levels filled with puzzles, enemies, and lots of zany moments. These levels usually function to show off a different avatar and gameplay mode, and most can be completed in 15 minutes or less. Now, the BONELAB campaign does reward exploration and is highly replayable, but I'm expecting the average campaign length to be somewhere between 3 and 6 hours, depending on how fast you're trying to move through it. A new avatar system not only allows you to change your character's appearance, but also alter stats like size, strength, speed, and even your holster location. It's a truly unique title from the very beginning all the way to the last few moments. Honestly, nothing else out there is quite like Boneworks, and this title has plenty of WTF moments. If you came looking for a traditional single-player campaign, something that could stack up against Half-Life Alyx, well then you will be disappointed in that regard, but it also features 6 additional gameplay modes, which are all made available within the first 30 minutes of this title. The majority of those gameplay modes all have multiple different levels, so if the campaign isn't doing it for you, you could jump into Tac Trials, where you need to kill enemies as fast as possible and keep moving, a parkour mode where you sprint to the end in Mirror's Edge style fashion, the sandbox where you can spawn in enemies and items and just play around with, the arena which has you fighting waves of enemies, the experimental section which allows you to go bowling and have fun with physics, and there's also a built-in mod system. There's plenty of secrets and awesome moments scattered throughout this title, and my only real complaints include frustration coming from that IK and physics system. Some sections of the game feel like chores. I did experience multiple frame drops and even full game crashes on the quest. The enemy type is limited and dumb as dirt, and there's virtually no challenge in this game. There are no true consequences for dying, and you'll just respawn. The levels just become a leaderboard race rather than any form of challenge. Quest performance and crash issues are most likely linked to recording while playing. Performance was significantly better when I stopped recording, and I mainly crashed between levels. Now, even with these issues, I still recommend the title, especially to VR enthusiasts and those who enjoy sandbox games. But if you're susceptible to motion sickness, or you're looking for a traditional campaign, this is most likely not right for you. It's extremely easy to spend countless hours in this game, especially when every other moment it feels like something amazing just happened, and I'm sure this title will spawn countless YouTube and TikTok clips. Now on screen is my overall verdict, a summary of the information we previously went over, and I'm giving this game an 8.9, making it just short of a must-play title. Now I think that score is arguable depending on your experience with VR, but I do believe it lacks overall mainstream appeal. It's extremely unique, delivers an experience you can't get anywhere else, breaks the mold when it comes to VR games, it's specifically targeted for VR enthusiasts, it's highly optimized, and looks surprisingly good on the Quest 2. These separate gameplay modes offer countless replayability, and with built-in mods, I can't wait to see what we get next. On the con side, if you have any susceptibility to motion sickness, you might not be able to play this game at all. Some of the campaign can feel like a chore. It is still very much a tech demo without your traditional single-player campaign. There's virtually no challenge unless you're looking at a leaderboard. The enemy types are extremely limited, and they're also dumb as dirt. I mean, half the time they just trip over their own feet. So definitely a lot of pros and cons here, but overall it's a fantastic title that does something new. And some people will hate this, but a lot of the community are just gonna eat it up. Now let's move into some getting started tips and tricks. And just a quick reminder, none of these tips are really providing any spoilers to the game. If you haven't played Boneworks, a lot of the mechanics will feel extremely unique and possibly frustrating until you get the hang of them. BONELAB never holds your hand, and even when it does explain something, it's still pretty easy to miss. Let's start with calibration. The new calibration system allows you to tailor your avatar to your actual body. There's a simple system that asks for your height and t-shirt size, but you could go into the advanced mode and get your avatar to fit like a glove. This helps both with immersion and controlling your character inside of the game. Now, when you do get into the game, you might quickly realize you have to deal with motion sickness. While not specific to BONELAB, the best advice is to stop when you feel any discomfort and take a break for a minimum of 1 hour. You can't muscle your way through motion sickness, and continual small sessions are the only way to help you adjust. Now, the worst sections in BONELAB are whenever you get in a vehicle, and I do have some specific tips for that, which I will get to later in the video. Now, an important lesson to learn is leg control and climbing. The right analog stick, or rather the non-locomotion stick, controls your legs. Not only does it allow you to crouch, but you can tuck your legs in when you're in midair, perfect for making certain jumps, and it's also pretty necessary when climbing. Climbing can feel awkward, but if you could grab hold of something, you can usually climb over it with a combination of moving your legs, pulling your arms, and pressing the jump button. It'll definitely take some practice and getting used to though. Now, to the best of my knowledge, unlockables are never explained, and whenever you see these small Pokemon ball type objects, you don't have to carry them anywhere, just squeeze them apart. Now, they are scattered out everywhere in the main campaign, and whenever you find one, it will give you new items that you can play around with inside of the sandbox modes. So it's definitely worth taking your time and looking around. Now, bounce pads are new to the Boneworks universe, and they will shoot you straight up into the air, which can be quite disorienting. To make matters even worse, it'll usually smack you right off an object and have you tumbling right back down. So whenever you see a jump pad, make sure to look straight up when you get on it, and there's most likely a pipe to grab at the top of the jump. Your momentum also carries into the jump pad, so if you're moving forward when you get on, you won't be shot straight up, but you will be shot forward. The same thing goes for moving left, right, and backwards. Now, an infamous returning enemy from the Boneworks universe is the head crabs, and these little dudes can be terrifying. If one gets on your face, just drop your weapons and pull it right off. Otherwise, you'll be sucked into VR forever. So don't panic. Stay calm, pull them right off your face, and also keep your hand or a weapon in front of your face so they can't latch on to begin with. And this is also a great time to remind you that you are always armed in this game. Even when you don't have a weapon, you're not defenseless. You can always punch, elbow, and even headbutt your enemies. Maybe grab a buddy and throw them off a cliff, or smash their head into a wall. There's multiple options for unarmed physical brutality in this game. Now, if you end up feeling like you're lost or going the wrong way in BONELAB, you're not. This title definitely invokes that feeling, but remember, it also rewards exploration. So just assume you're always going the right way, and if you're ever stuck, look up. That usually helps a bit. And my final tip for you guys is just embrace the jank. The physics are your frenemy here. It's what makes BONELAB absolutely fantastic and occasionally extremely frustrating. Keep in mind, you have a full body system with collisions. This is extremely rare for VR in general, and especially on the Quest. Embrace it, enjoy it, love it. You can throw your full body at an enemy, headbutts, elbows, you name it. If you're having an issue climbing, or you randomly get stuck on something, take a moment to see what your body is doing in-game. Your hand or elbow is most likely stuck in something. Okay, from here, I want to move into a very light walkthrough. Again, I will keep spoilers to a minimum, and I'm just trying to show off a few areas that I found to be a bit trickier. And my first headache was, how do I actually unlock the game's campaign? After completing the initial level, the descent, an elevator brings you to the hub, where you'll find the other gameplay modes. But nothing shows you how to actually continue the campaign. Now, your goal is to access the quarantine area, which is on the back left side of the level. You will need to jump into some of the gameplay modes. Now, you don't actually have to play them, but you do need to at least enter them and then come back out. Once that happens, you will notice a glowing beam on top of the gameplay mode that you entered. In the back center of the hub, up a flight of stairs, there is a crane. You need to plug 2 batteries into it, and then you can start the crane game. There'll be an orb on top of every one of those gameplay modes that you entered, and just carry them to the back center, as you can clearly see little circles where they need to go. When these are in place, the quarantine area will unlock. And that's how you continue the campaign. It's pretty straightforward from here, but an area that caught me up was a giant rubber stopper in the bottom of the ground. Well, there's a controller for an electronic lift located in the room above it, and that'll pop the cork for you. Now, later in the same level, I also momentarily got stumped by a minor physics puzzle that requires you to press a button on a wall in order to open a door. Don't mess around with the boxes. Just grab the concrete cylinder with handles and slap it in place, and you are now good to go. Now, another minor stumper came on the next level, which is basically a physics puzzle hanging in the air above you. As I mentioned earlier, when in doubt, look up and you'll see the object up above that you need to move. You'll see a hook on the ground, simply connect it to the rail, and then move it across to the right. Now, if you're having trouble actually getting it to move the train up, stand on top of it, and your character will have more leverage, making it easier to pull. Remember, physics are your frenemy here. Now, once you get up top, it's pretty straightforward to get across. There are additional jump pads you can activate in case you fall off, so you don't have to do the entire puzzle all over again. And the final rail requires you to move it all the way to the left, so you could slap down the plank and continue on. Now the next level takes you down a roller coaster, and my only advice here is for those susceptible to motion sickness. Basically, this level is completely optional. There's targets to shoot at for a high score, and it is a really nice view, but if you're uncomfortable, just close your eyes until the end. Now the following level was straightforward, I had no issues there, until I got to the very end, and after passing the giant person, I thought I needed to force my way into an elevator, but after 10 minutes of trying, I actually just turned around and saw a whole new room. From here, the title just becomes a series of mini games. Most of levels 6 through 10 are timed, so if you want to see yourself on the leaderboard, rush through it, or take your time if you want to find the unlockables. Now I found the run to be a little frustrating because your character has a little additional forward momentum after you stop, so just be aware of that. And the one area you might get hung up for a second on is the big red button on the floor. After you weigh it down with the 2 cubes, one already on the floor and one that's on the ceiling that you can either climb to or shoot down, turn around facing the way you just came through, and on the right hand side you should see a crate that has descended, and that is your new route. Now a fun little level that you could just play around with is on the moon. Again, no spoilers, but if you just want to continue with the campaign, the way to finish this level is directly in the center, down in a crater, where you'll need to climb on top of the building and then pop the avatar orb. Now level 10 comes with another motion sickness warning. The go-kart is going to push your VR legs to the extreme, but I do have a solution for those who suffer from motion sickness. Simply run the track. Don't get into the go-kart, run 3 laps, and then the avatar orb will be unlocked in the first place trophy cup. So if you want to thank me for that one, make sure to leave a thumbs up. You're going to pass one more level called the climb, which is straightforward. Just climb to the top. I don't have any major tips for this one. And from here on out, I don't want to mention any more because it feels like it could get into spoiler territory. You'll face a lot more physics puzzles and enemies, but just put together all the knowledge you've previously learned and it should be straightforward. If you want to trample your enemies without much effort, I recommend using the tall avatar as much as possible. Okay, everybody, that was my extensive coverage of BONELAB. I really hope you enjoyed it. This is above and beyond what I normally do, so I hope you appreciate it. If you do, please leave me a thumbs up. If I didn't cover something, if you're lost somewhere, drop it in the comments. I promise I will answer you. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And as always, I will see you guys on next time.